now in Buenos Aires. I haven't got a lot of time in Buenos Aires, just 2 days, well, a day and a half really. So I'm going to make the most out of it that I can. So I've dumped my stuff at the hotel and I've come straight here to Rilacorta Cemetery, where there's loads of unique tombs. And it's a lot of the rich that have died in the past. This could be the most famous tomb in the cemetery, and that's because it's the tomb of Eva Perón. And you may be thinking, who is Eva Perón? And I did think that. I recognise the name, I couldn't think where from. Reading a few things here, now I understand. Evita, so Madonna played her in the film version of Evita, Don't Cry For Me, Argentina. It was her, so she was based on a real person. I think I don't know a lot about what she did. I know she was married to like the leader, I think, and she helped change Argentina for the better. I think, something along those lines anyway. This place is actually huge, so I don't know if I'm going to have enough time to see everything here. I could probably spend hours in here checking out all the different tombs, but it's a lot bigger than I realised. Certainly very different to Highgate, but just as fascinating. So this is the tomb of Rufina Cambaceres. So she was a 19-year-old performer of some sort, and what happened was she was believed to have died. One of the employees that worked here noticed that the coffin had moved and looked damaged. So when he investigated more, he found out that it appears she was buried alive because there was all scratch marks inside the coffin, and it appears that she died after being buried. So it's believed that she fell into some sort of catatonic state and was misdiagnosed dead and buried alive at 19. I mean, that's horrific. That is actually one of my biggest fears, being buried alive. I think it's very, very unlikely to happen nowadays, but still it's something that has always terrified me. The amount of movies I've seen where such things happen, just terrifying. And that poor girl, I mean, oh, that must have been absolutely horrific. So this is Floralis Generica, which was a sculpture designed and made by Eduardo Capellano. April 13th, 2002. Well, my birthday on April 13th, 2002. It was installed. And basically it's just like a giant flower. But it still looks quite cool. So behind me now, just across the road, probably a bit far to see, so I'll insert a picture. That is the Tours Monument, which appears to be some kind of tower with vines wrapped around it. I'm not really sure much more apart from that, but it does look quite cool. It looks kind of fairy tale like. Okay, so now I've stopped off at the obelisk, which is a huge monument which is kind of at the centre of the city, and when there's like big football matches and Argentina win, everyone gathers around here to celebrate. So I'm now in a place called Barolo Palace, and it's based on like the Divine Comedy, and there's 13 different floors, which I guess each floor is like part of the book. Yeah, but just the architecture in here is amazing. I'm now at the Congress building, which is quite a huge building. It's massive. There seems to be some kind of demonstration going on. I'm not too sure what it is. Across the road there's actually a windmill building. So it's like a coffee shop. You can see the shape of the windmill. It's a place that was meant to stay open for years and years and years. It did close for like 20 odd years, but it reopened again last year. It's meant to be a historical coffee shop building. Right, so I'm now at the pink house called Casa Rosada.
Yes.
And this is where the president doesn't live, but it's the president's house. It's also where Evita, where Madonna would sort of like stand at the balcony there singing Don't Cry For Me, Argentina. So Eva Perón was there and she'd address people from the top of the balcony. So would the president occasionally. And it's called the Pink House because originally there were two different parties that were disagreeing. One was red, one was white, and then they sort of combined, which is why it's pink, and it's sort of seen as peace. I'm now at the port, and behind me here is a very famous bridge. It's known as the Women's Bridge, and it's designed by a Spanish architect called Calatrava, and he's actually done one in Dublin. It's actually a very similar bridge to this in Dublin. I've just ordered some empanadas. One's got chicken in, no it hasn't, sorry, one has got pork and barbecue, and one has got chorizo and some other sort of meat. So let's see what this is like. I don't know which flavour this is.
They're very hot.
They're hot.
This is the chorizo one.
This is the chorizo one. It's nice. Not as spicy as I thought it might be, but it's good. So I'm now in Caminito, this area here, which has got all these different colourful buildings. Apparently a long time ago the people that used to live here wanted to paint their houses, so they went down to the ports. They asked the ship owners if they had any extra paint left, and when they did, they would take the paint they could, which is why you've got all the different colours here. But it looks amazing, absolutely amazing. I'm knackered, I'm exhausted, so I've just got back to my hotel after being out all day. It's only about 9 p.m. Normally I'd be staying out in the bars drinking, but I've got a flight at 6 a.m. in the morning, and I've got a taxi picking me up at 2 a.m, which is probably a bit silly. I think I probably could have got picked up at 3 a.m. and would have been okay. But today's been good. I've explored a lot of the city. I've seen all the sites that I wanted to see. I had a tour guide show me around called Ro, and she was great company, very informative. She showed me a few other places as well as a place I wanted to see, and she had a lot of information. There was a point where lots of people went missing. I think this was in the 1980s, and people went missing, but they were basically killed. So people that spoke up against the government here were just taken and killed. What would happen with a lot of the pregnant women that may have been taken and killed? The child would be born, and there's all these children basically that were born and given to other parents, military families. A lot of the children, even today, there might be children that were brought up in this family and had no idea that they were not their real parents. But from my understanding, more and more people are aware now if they were their real parents or not. But there was a point where a lot of the grandmothers wanted to find their grandchildren because obviously their own children had been murdered, and they wanted to try to find their grandchildren. So they started protests, and they'd wear these like handkerchiefs around their heads, and they would just, instead of talking, they would just show up outside the Pink House. And it got to the point where there were lots and lots of these elderly, like grandmothers, walking around, that eventually it started to make a difference. I think people stopped being taken and disappearing for speaking up against the government. And I think some of the children were even found, and throughout the years it happened more and more, or it became more frequent at one point where children were actually being reunited with their own family. And nowadays they've got DNA tests and the like to actually find out if their parents are really their real parents or not.